Good morning. Thank you, Toastmaster. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests. The word for today is perfunctory. I invite you to use that word in your speeches, and towards the end of the meeting, I will report on your word usage. That's another skill we would like to develop here in Toastmasters, adding in special words to our speeches so we can adapt in our speeches. So the definition of the word is in chat. You'll see it for everyone. The word is perfunctory. Perfunctory is the word. Let's use the word perfunctory. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. And by the way, so being a Toastmaster is by no means perfunctory. We have to actually wake up early in the morning, especially coming to this club and actually be here actively. So we don't do our things perfunctorily. In any case, our battle encounter and video master is Harun. Harun, will you tell us what that means?
Well, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster Wyoming. As ballot counter, my job is to count the ballots. We'll have 3 prepared speeches, table topics, and evaluators. And at the end of the meeting, I would invite you, I will be sending out a link where you can vote for the best speaker, best evaluator, and best table topics. Once we have all the votes, I can tally those votes. Well, I'm not going to be doing any of the tallying. Google's going to do that, and I will report back who the winners are at the end of the meeting. So I will be sending out momentarily links. Thank you, Mr. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. Somehow we have some background noise. Ideally, we can turn that off. Otherwise, I can still hear the radio. Thank you very much. Sometimes when you have a web browser on and it's connected, sometimes that comes on too. But in any case, we're going to start our prepared speeches. We have 3 prepared speeches today. Our first prepared speaker has been a longtime member of this particular club. And in fact, she's been here longer than I have.
Wyoming, before we start the prepared speeches, could you give us get the evaluator and match up the evaluators?
Okay, well, the first evaluator is Gautam, and he's going to evaluate Georgie's speech. Harun is going to evaluate Saina's speech, and Jose is going to evaluate my speech. And also, I forgot the key function before any of this is the idea of the invocator. And the invocator today is Harun.
Okay, so normally, well, thank you, Wyoming. Normally, when we have a physical meeting where we are in a meeting room, we all stand up. But since we're all virtual today, we're just going to skip that. The growth mindset is an interesting topic, and it first gained into our consciousness when Carol Dweck, who is a professor at Stanford, first published her book about what it means to have a growth mindset. To me, what a growth mindset, if I were to condense that book into one sentence, the thing that sort of reminds me of that is not to think of adversity as an enemy, but as your friend. That the real enemy within ourselves is complacency. And for me, I feel that whatever adversity we may face, as long as we can think of that as a way to learn, and we're going to always come out better than what we went into our adversity. So that's the invocation, and I hope that when we leave this meeting today, we're going to learn something new. And I know that it's tough to get up in the morning and to sort of present ourselves in the morning and put ourselves out there in front of many people, but that's what learning is all about, is to take on those tough challenges and learn something. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Harun, our invocator. In any case, we're going to move forward with our prepared speeches. Our first speaker is Georgie. As they indicated, she has been a long-time member, and she speaks on a number of different topics. Today, she's going to continue on this. I talk about the idea of wealth, and her topic is going to be family wealth implementation. Let's welcome Georgie to talk about family wealth implementation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Today, we're going to continue talking about our finances, specifically focusing on family wealth and how you might implement some of the things we've been talking about over the last few weeks. To remind everybody, part of the reason, one second, my thing is suddenly not deciding to work. Hold on a second. Crap. Okay. Part of the reason we're doing this is because we're going to have the largest wealth transfer happening in the next generation with the boomers retiring. And while it's great if your family does have some wealth, it turns out that most wealthy families will lose their wealth 90% by the third generation. This is due not to things like bad investments or taxes, but actually due to things like breakdowns in family communication and trust, and not preparing the heirs properly for their responsibilities going forward. We're going to be getting some ideas on how we can implement family wealth from the book Family Wealth by James E. Hughes. We're going to start with some easy ways that you and your family can work together to complete some family wealth concepts. We're going to then talk about more advanced ways that you can start implementing these ideas with your family. And we're going to go into the most complicated one, what's considered the family bank. To begin with, the easiest way, obviously, to manage family wealth is the one that's most traditional in these people's minds. There's usually one person who's really good with money, who's accumulated a lot of money, and now everybody is kind of expecting to have some distributed to them as they get older and as that person dies and has a will. Now, that's great if you do have a lot of money and with concentrated in one person's hands. Another thing, though, is for people like ordinary people who don't quite have all that money, you might want to work together with other members of your family to combine your money so that the younger relatives are able to be educated. For example, in the United States, we have something called 529 college plans. This allows people to pool money together in a tax-free way so that money can accumulate over time for the education needs of the younger relatives. Now, there are other things you can do, such as many people are interested in giving to charities. You might want to talk your family members into combining your charitable contributions together so that you have a larger impact on things that are of interest to your family. An example of this that has been done quite successfully was the charity started by the Rockefellers. You had Rockefeller Sr., who founded Standard Oil and made all the money. And then you had his son, Rockefeller Jr., who founded the Rockefeller Foundation that is still with us today. So you might want to talk about this with your family, combining your money, and you might want to do it through something called a donor advised funds that we've talked about a few weeks ago in this meeting. The idea being that you can combine your money together and can donate it under the auspice of your family and its family name to any charities of interest. Now, going on to the more advanced ways you might want to do this, it can be kind of difficult for people to, as we've said before, talk about money and finances. One way I would suggest you might want to look into is combining the information you have about finances with others so that they can learn from what you have accomplished and likewise what they have accomplished. One of the easiest ways to start with, at least in my family, is that we love a good bargain, and there's no way I can compete with my sisters and my mom with respect to finding good financial deals. In fact, I like to say that my family is Olympic level when it comes to finding bargains. Unfortunately, I am very perfunctory, but I do learn from them and I do listen to what they suggest I should do as far as saving money. Likewise, the next thing to do would be looking into merging your money with respect to finances and deals And there has been, perhaps you've noticed in the mainstream news, there's been a lot of interest lately in stocks, thanks to things happening with Robinhood and a lot of the short selling. Even people who traditionally haven't been too much into stocks and bonds are now taking interest. One of the things you might want to consider doing with your family is forming a stock or an investment club. They are not very trendy nowadays, but they were very interesting back in the 80s and 90s. Back in those days, in the ancient times, before there was an internet, it was very difficult to get financial information. So people would form investment clubs, pooling their money, their time, and their resources as they looked for different stocks or other things to invest in. As I said, these things have been done for decades. You might want to look online for more information. Now, these are all great ideas, but it can be kind of difficult sometimes to get the younger family members to get interested in investing in charity, but also so that they get over their shyness about presenting their ideas to the older members. One way to do this might be to encourage them to talk about things that are of interest to them, but might be unusual to the older members. For example, you might want to talk to the younger members about charities that they'd be interested in contributing to. For example, a lot of them would be interested more maybe social justice oriented charities like Black Lives Matter. They might also be interested in things like climate change type of charities. Once again, great ways for them to present new and modern ideas to the family members. Other things that might be of interest to them, for example, might be something Bitcoin related. Grandma might not know if Bitcoin is one or two words, but granddaughter might be very, very interested in the Coinbase IPO that's supposed to take place this year. Once again, use the resource of the families to incorporate lots of different ideas. Now, speaking of different ideas, we talked previously about the idea of a family bank. The Rothschilds did this, in which the elder member made loans to his 5 sons. The idea being the sons would then reimburse the family bank, pay the loans back with a little bit of interest. So that would be available for the next generation. This is a great idea. Older family members have money, but they're not necessarily interested in maybe more risky investments because they don't have the same time horizon. They're more interested in income. They're also interested in shrinking their estates and their estate taxes, and they would like to often make gifts to the younger family members. What they could do instead is to make a loan to the family bank, which would then be repaid to them with interest to get that income that they enjoy. The younger family members need money for their education, their first car, their first house, lots of different things. They're focused more on growth, maybe more risky opportunities where it could end up being a much bigger return on the capital. And they do have much more time for these investments. They can start off by getting a low interest, low cost loan from the family bank and making repayments back to the bank. It's a win-win for everybody. Now, as I mentioned, there are a lot of great things that we can do with our families. We've mentioned that there's a lot of different ways you can combine your finances, but remember, the most important thing is to remember that family is not about love, but really about money, but about love. It is about knowing that people will be watching out for you and nothing else will give you that. Not money, not fame, not work. Hope you have enjoyed this and you bring these ideas to your family. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give ourselves 1 minute to provide specific feedback to Georgie. You can send her a personal direct chat. So our next speaker has only been in this club 2 times, and she's still a guest. She's going to talk about the most influential technology in her life. Let's welcome Sana Pieper.
Hello, Toastmasters. Thank you for welcoming me today. So today I would like to talk about what the most influential piece of technology has been to me in 2021. Now, you might recognize this question from last week's tabletop, and that's because it's been sitting in the back of my head this whole time. And although I loved Haroon's answer, I couldn't shake it from my head. I considered my phone, my car, my computer. And as I was doing laundry this past Thursday, I realized I knew what the most influential piece of technology was in my life, and that's the washing machine. Now, that might sound like an odd answer. Here in the United States, 2021, washing machines are a commodity. But the history of the washing machine has inside of it embedded something that really matters to me and my ancestors that allowed me to be where I am here in 2021. So I'd like to bring you through that history of the washing machine today. You see, there have been a variety of ways to wash clothes throughout history. From the Romans, who had some very interesting detergent ideas, such as using fat from sacrificed animals in order to disinfect it, or even using pools of urine. That one persisted for hundreds of years, actually, and in some ways it did actually disinfect the clothes with the acid that's inside of urine. But by the time we started, Europeans started moving into the area that's now the United States, that one had gone by the wayside. And instead we were, using rivers and streams, abrasive sands to rub your clothes with, and rocks to shake out any debris that might be there. But as you can imagine, this was a pretty lengthy process. You had to, gather all your clothes, carry them to a river, wash them individually by hand, and then carry them all back to your house, right? So even as early as the 1760s, washing machines started to come into existence, particularly in Germany. That got developed throughout the 1800s. And by the time we hit 1937, we had our very first modern automatic washing machine. Now, this automatic washing machine had huge implications for women. In fact, they did a study in 1945 where they had women wash clothes the way that they normally did. And then they had women do the same amount of washing, but with an automatic washing machine. It took women less than a quarter of the time to wash their clothes with the washing machine. In fact, Ladies' Home Journal advertised that you could save 18 and a half hours a week with a family of 4 if you owned an automatic washing machine. I would like for you to imagine what you would do with 18 and a half hours a week that just materialized in your life. Well, for these women, they decided to use that time to get part-time jobs. In fact, here in the United States, women still dominate 75% of the part-time labor force. And because the automatic washing machine came out in 1937, it started really getting into homes in the 1940s, and this was perfect timing. Because right around the corner was World War II, which meant that all of our men were packing up, going overseas to go fight in a war, and somebody had to take the jobs they left behind. Not only that, somebody had to take the jobs that had been created, making soldiers clothing, making ammunition, making bedding, making medicine, and women stepped up to the plate. You see, we live in a capitalist society, which means here, money is power. And so providing this kind of money to women on a regular basis, where all of a sudden they're able to bring income into their families, provided significant amounts of individual power. And there are a lot of scholars that say this is really what spurred the women's rights movement. Even today, 90% of clothes washing is done by women in the household. That's like now in 2021, 90% of it. So having all this extra time really made a difference. In fact, the University of Montreal did a study that said that the washing machine has been more effective for the women's rights movement than almost anything else, including contraceptives and abortion. These are big topics for women. So when I tell you that I am grateful for the washing machine, it's not just because I'm not spending 10 hours a day doing the washing, or 10 hours a week doing the washing for my small family, but it's also because the history of the washing machine empowered my ancestors to start taking jobs and allows me to hold a full-time job now, where I'm contributing to the family income and where I have power inside of my family relationship to help make decisions and be a part of the conversation. So next time you or another member of your family goes to wash your clothes, I want you to take a moment to admire the incredible piece of technology sitting in front of you. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Let's give ourselves 1 minute to provide specific feedback to Sana. So we're going to move on to the next speaker, who is myself. I'm going to talk about a story on progress on science research. So I'm going to start. A guy named Isidore Rabi. He was born at the end of the 19th century, more than 100 years ago. He was born in Central Europe, and then he immigrated to the US and grew up around New York area. And he studied chemistry and eventually physics. And by the time around 1929, he got a position at the University of Columbia. And it just happens that around that time, at the beginning of the 20th century, people started studying about what's going on inside these atoms. And they found that inside the atom, there are these nuclei, this nucleus stuff inside. And he started interested in that. He tried to study more about it and learn more about it. And from all the stuff that's going on, he figured out that there's interesting properties inside those nucleus. It just happened that some of the nucleus, not all of them, respond to having a magnet next to it. With a magnet next to it, those nuclei can resonate certain specific radio signals, very similar to a tuning fork that you take to tune your piano. When you hit on that tuning fork, it could put out a C note or a D note. And it really depends on the size of that tuning fork, which is related to the frequency of the sound. And same thing with the radio signals in these nuclei. So he called this discovery NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. And for that, he got a Nobel Prize in 1944. It just happens that a few years later, in the 1950s, two other guys take that concept and discover that by spending time and figuring out how these radio signals coming from different atoms, they can figure out the structure of how these atoms are connected, and therefore understand structures of molecules. And for that, these two guys also got a Nobel Prize. And then 20 years later, in 1970, three guys start looking at this stuff and say, oh, you can look at all these signals from all these different radios. And because the human body is made up of all these molecules, you can then maybe using computers to look at all those signals and then figure out a picture of what's going on inside the body. In fact, you can get a very good picture of the heart or the liver or what's going on with the muscles. And you can even tell the difference between whether a certain part of your muscle has cancer or not. And eventually they figure out that you can actually even look at what's inside the brain. And they call this device that they discover, nuclear magnetic resonance imaging. And when people first heard about this nuclear magnetic resonance, they said, oh, that's terrible. We don't want anything nuclear because that really is radioactive. So they take out the word nuclear, and it turned out to be magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. Very important tools for doctors. And for that, 2 out of the 3 guys got a Nobel Prize. So all these guys got Nobel Prize for taking some concept that someone discovered and eventually ended up with this device. And by the time 1980s comes, the original guy, Isidore Rabi, is over 80 years old. And he had some problems, so he went to see his doctor, he talked to the doctor. The doctor said, why don't we put you in this MRI machine? So they lie him down, put it on the bed, and then the doctor told him, you have to actually sit still or lie still for 15 minutes and maybe up to an hour. Just don't do anything. They push him in on this bed inside this big tube. It's an enormous tube. And then they close it up. And he's sitting there. There's some light and so on. And then you start hearing these loud bangs. Bang, 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 bang. Because the magnet is starting. With the magnet, they can then see the images inside him. And as he looked up in this tube, it's slightly reflective. You see his face. And it reminds him of how he was involved in discovering this resonance in radio signals because of magnets. And now he's seeing his face resonating inside the tube. So the whole idea is scientific discovery takes time. Once you take time, and then it takes time to actually develop into something that's very useful. And this is a form of resonating as well, is you take something and it gets stronger and stronger over time because people developed it. And that's how science works. Also, discovery is also a form of resonating. And that's what we have to do. All these guys, whether it's Isidore Rabi or the other guys to discover all these other things, they didn't know anything about the nucleus or all this stuff. They have to spend time really figuring that out. We have to spend time figuring things out because we don't know what's coming. And that's how we're gonna become better and make more stuff. Mr. Toastmaster, so that's the speech. Please send Wai Ming specific feedback for the next minute. We're going to move forward with our evaluation section, who's going to led by Anesh. Anesh, our general evaluator.
Thank you, Amin. Good morning, everyone. Today, my role is general evaluator, and as a general evaluator, I'm going to introduce all evaluators. And the first evaluator is going to be Gautam, who is going to evaluate George's speech about family wealth implementation. Gautam, let's welcome Gautam.
Thank you, Anis. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Good morning, Georgie. You started with a very good introductory of topic, family, wealth, and implementation. And as a part of your serious talk, as always, you inspire the audiences with the real stories and like true stories that touched upon certain part of our lives, like managing our personal wealth, managing our family wealth, which draws attention to your topic. So you had a very good like started with the visual aids and provided examples and shared some personal experiences, and that we can resonate with your content and the topic that you are sharing. So that was really helpful. And with some of the content I felt personally overwhelmed, such as having slides with the more points, and also your phase of delivering the words. It was a little bit faster. So we have more content in the slides, and your face is like faster. So I was like, it was really a little bit difficult for me to resonate with. Okay, I understand something. I'm just trying to resonate with what happened in my life or in my personal experiences. So like to digest the information that I receive and resonate with my experiences, it was hard to catch up doing it in this period of time. And your your eye contact and gestures you used really well, but it was not captured within the frame. Like so, like when you see me, like my hands are like cut off, but you used it really well. But it should be like maybe you can adjust your camera to capture your gestures, so that would add more emotions, and you can easily resonate with your talk. So, and I would like to see a few pauses between the topics and sentences, so that we can like realize, okay, we moved from story X and we are on story Y. Okay, I'm seeing some correlation with my experiences. So a 2 second or 3 second a pause between the sentences will help us to digest the information and resonate with the content. And other than that, the speech was really good. As always, I didn't find any ahs and ums, and you ended up with call for action. That was really good. I'm looking forward to the next speech, and thank you for sharing the content today.
Thank you, Gautam. Now our next general evaluator is Harun, and Harun is going to evaluate Jaina's speech. Let's welcome Harun.
Thank you. Let me just make sure that the camera is set. Well, thank you very much, Anish. And first of all, thank you to Zaina for giving us a great overview of the history of the washing machine. You started off with this with the history of the washing machine, of how you came up to the idea, and that's always a great start, because you actually focused on what inspired you about to think about this topic, and you came up with what was the most important thing and the technology that came up, and it illustrated that you could immediately connect with the audience, because I mean, washing is such an important part of our lives. I absolutely hate doing laundry, but we still have to do it, and it's a topic that resonates with a lot of people. So that was, you immediately engage the audience, you hook them in, and that's always a great start to a speech. You then started off about the history of what it means to do laundry, about how it actually progressed from Roman times to how it was done during the early years of the United States. And you focused on and trying to figure out what were the contrasts in washing machines. And this is always a great way to do an explanation for a topic, about the significance of a topic. Why, about when you're trying to explain something, a lot of explanations are causal, and you kind of really hit on that, because why is it the way this is and why it isn't? And that's a great thing. And then you actually then moved on to the part about telling us about what was the significance of a washing machine, the impact of an automated washing machine, and how much time it saved, and what were the actual causes, what were the other events that caused it. That's amazing. One of the things that I felt was somewhat missing in your speech, that while you did engage the topic about what it meant to you personally in terms of its contributions to where you are today, you could have increased the impact by saying, hey, when I do laundry, I save like about X amount of hours. I know that you quoted a statistic about 18 hours being saved by a study in Montreal, but you could actually talk and say that, hey, this is me saving 18 hours a day so that I can focus on that. Well, you're just basically what you're trying to say is that instead of actually making this an abstract, quoting an abstract study, you're actually personalizing it and saying it that this is the impact that it makes on me. Otherwise, I think that your conclusion was really spot on. You wrapped up all the threads that you had on the topics on the points that you made in your speech, and I felt that it was really good. You did actually made a very solid case on why this is the most impactful technology in your life. Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harun. Now, the third evaluator for today is Jose. Jose is going to evaluate Wai Ming's speech about MRI machines. Let's welcome Jose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Thank you, Wai Ming, for another very interesting speech on history, technology, and innovation. I like the way you presented your speech in a storytelling format. And being a storytelling format, you had three different stories to tell. And as far as the mechanics of your presentation, I like the way you had inflections in your word. There was vocal variety. It was loud enough. I understood what you were saying. The word usage was very effective. In other words, it was not perfunctory. You did put emphasis on your message, and that I like the way you did your gestures. Although maybe in a wider format, it would have been better to see more of your hand. But the gestures seem timely. I like it. So that was very effective. So moving on to the message content, you had basically three stories, and within the three stories, I would say I would say at the first story, I would say maybe I would have some kind of an interesting a drawing phrase into your story, something that makes it very interesting so that the audience will listen more into your speech. That way you have a first sentence, and then somewhere within your three stories, some key pointing message within each story to keep your message, to keep your audience drawn to it. So I think if you just add a little more, I understand that you want to increase the interest in your stories, but maybe I would say within those three stories, you add something, and then towards the end, I like the overall wisdom of your message being that technology takes a long time, and that technology comes in steps. But there's something else that I was looking for at the end of the speech was, how about another, maybe one more element of benefit, maybe creativity, some aspect of creativity that's within your story. And I think it would have been more effective that way, because I thought being a long time and progression of ideas into steps doesn't seem like much. Maybe a little bit more, maybe one more, another aspect of creativity that you would like to impart upon your audience. So, but overall, a very good speech, excellent mechanics. I did like the progression, but a little bit more effective and a little bit more pointed topics, and it will be a whole very wholesome, non-perfunctory speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. I feel like all the speeches and evaluation process went in a non-perfectory way, and it's a really great session. With that, our general evaluation session is complete. Now let's start the table topic session. Our today's table topic master is Harun. Let's welcome Harun.
Thank you. Thank you, Anish. Today's topic is the growth mindset. And for our guests, I'd like to tell you about our table topics is really about giving you a random question. And then what we do is that you'll have the choice of either answering the question or maybe turning it around and addressing a topic for 1 to 2 minutes. And it's really about speaking in an impromptu manner about whatever you want to talk about. Okay, so growth mindset. I have a confession to make. Today, I did not have a growth mindset. And sometimes I feel that my mindset flips between having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Now, just to give you a quick explanation what I mean by a fixed mindset, and this is really borrowed from the originator of the original developed person who came up with the idea about the mindsets, how mindsets play into our, is that a fixed mindset is really you kind of settle into your routine and you say that you believe that you cannot make progress today. Today was, for me, was one of those days. So if my questions seem a little perfunctory, please excuse me. So let me start off with with a topic that I'm always interested in, is that how do you deal with situations where you know that you're not going to be able to do it, or sometimes you've internalized it, and how do you get over that? And I'd like to bring this question to Gautam, because Gautam has always struck me as a person who's always espoused about improving himself and learning new things. So Gautam, how do you deal with it when you have a situation where you feel that you have internalized that you can't grow out of?
Thank you, Table Topics Master Harun. That was really a good question, but I was not expected the question will be towards me. Though it was not perfunctory way of doing things, I slice it down into little bits. Like, I have always imagined our mental complexity of things like that will obscure my perception of how can I do this. So I look from a different perspective as a persona, not a person mind. Like, I'm a third person within myself. Okay, how this third person can solve this, and I follow the principle. Even if I cannot get over that, I look for, can I slice it more further, like make things more atomic? And if I can do those atomic things day by day, or a month, or a week, or a year, at the end of the day, I'm gonna solve it. But if I think as a whole part of all the, if I put all the atomic components and make it into a whole, then it will be like I'm afraid of that, or the complexity of the thing will not let me think about from a different perspective. So I make it more atomic, and I imagine, and also the deadline plays a crucial role here. If I want to do it something immediately and it's a huge thing, and I'll reflect on myself, I'll say yes or no immediately because of the impact of the deadline. But if I have like a week or a month or a year, then I'll make those things into very atomic and try to achieve it. If not, okay, I'll take a step back and I'll pat myself. Let's do it again. That's how I do. Thank you for the topic and question, Harun.
Thank you, Gautam. My next question is, how is that that over the past few years, growth mindset and fixed mindsets and tiny habits and all of these have become really mainstream thoughts about how to actually do that, and especially in this part of California, in Silicon Valley, where there is an obsession with personal productivity and being effective. So my next question is that do you feel that a lot of these topics have taken that a sense of in popular culture, and that because they've become a lot very popular in everybody's thinking, that the original message has been lost? Jose, would you like to take that question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. The question is it possible to achieve? Your question is, yeah, what's the challenge of personal growth? Is it effective? It's not effective. Is it worth it? Is it even worth it? So, and that's a big challenge because if you really think about it, crime still exists. There's still lazy people, right? It's still an inherent problem within society. But I think you have to think it the other way around. And what if you didn't do it? So I think being positive and applying positive methods is, in a way, is effective. How effective it is, or how it's going to be in the future, I think is more a very interesting topic for me. I would say I do some personal research myself into, and you know this, into meditation and other mind focusing methods. And I found out that there is an effective method out there. There's not a deal effective method out there, but there is a progressive method out there. There's still something out there. And I think my prediction is in the future, mankind will there will be a progression wherein, or there will be a path wherein it is very effective for everyone, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. So my next question is a topic that I've been curious about, and I wanted to take somebody's take on opinion on it. Is that a lot of these topics, especially about working hard and dealing with challenges and just having a mindset of solving problems leading to success, is almost kind of is just a different message being presented in different ways. That you hear about Aesop's fables, and they talked about the same ideas also. Is that the tortoise was slow, and they eventually the hare got complacent and the tortoise won in the end, or the grasshopper who was lazing around, and the other animal, I don't recall the actual animal right now, but he was collecting nuts. I think it was a squirrel or something, and for the winter. And all of these stories were really, or these parables were about having people rehashing the same message that a lot of people, scientists are actually, the psychologists are trying to say that they're rehashing them into scholarly works. Do you get the same impression? And can you give an example of something that you've read that has been touted as something modern, but is actually a rehashing of something you heard in the past as well? Would anybody like to volunteer with this topic, with this question? Maybe perhaps a guest like to take this topic? Alvera, would you like to take this answer this topic? Go ahead.
Thank you, Harun. It's an interesting question for me because I am almost finishing the book, Mindset by Carol Dweck. And in fact, I was so taken away by this idea because, in fact, I have had several educations. First is in engineering, and the second one is in psychology. So it is so relating to my life. And yeah, back to your question, there are some similarities in the ideas we've heard already. Yeah, true. About acquiring the knowledge, that it is the progress. It is a good thing to learn. But I think there is a great difference in this idea, which wasn't mentioned before. It is about the ability of everyone to learn. that's, I think, the missing point for many, in many ideologies we've heard so far. So again, the idea that everyone can achieve whatever they want to, it is so amazing, I think, idea in this idea of growth mindset, which makes it outstanding of the things which we've heard before, because it isn't so much inspiring all of us to achieve, to live up to our potential, that it helps us much better to wear our and push our limits. Thank you. Back to you, Harun.
Thank you, Laura. That was an interesting take, and I'm glad you're reading the book as well. So my next question is about how to actually acquire a growth mindset. For me, acquiring a growth mindset is always tough, and I'm the kind of person who really doesn't like a lot of change. So I like things to be in a certain way, but I've also realized that in order for me to grow, you have to take on different challenges and different skill sets, and keep acquiring skills to have that, to sharpen that habit of learning. So for me, the challenge is always about getting started, and I'm still working on that challenge about, yes, I can get started on new things. What are any specific techniques that you've used in the past that you've said, okay, I know this is tough, but this is how I'm going to tackle this? Is there a kind of a method to it, or is it some kind of a system that you have? Any volunteers? Zaina, would you like to take this question?
Sure. So when I was younger, I wasn't really interested in running on the playground. I didn't really want to be in any sports. My mom forced me into middle school basketball, and I just had a miserable time. So working with my body, being athletic, that's not really something that I participated in as I was growing up. I wasn't very good at it as a consequence as I was growing up. And so it's something I avoided for a really, really long time. But as I got into college, I started discovering that I really enjoy dancing. Salsa dance, I even went to like a modern dance class. And on top of that, I started having some like lower back pain. And when I was researching it, it turns out that the best thing for back pain, according to Stanford professors, is in fact exercise. And so I started looking at it and getting into it, but there was a pretty big historical barrier for me to getting into exercise and being physical, because it's not something I'd really done, and it's something I actually actively avoided. But the way I got over it was, instead of thinking about where other 23-year-old women were at this time in their life, thinking about other people who were active for 3 months in their life, right? My little brother, so he's 6 years younger than I am, but he's been active for a long, long time, right? He's running track in high school now. He's got like a 6-minute mile, but he has like 7 years of running experience on me, right? So it's not fair to compare myself to someone with 7 more years of experience. I wouldn't do that in a job. And so it's not fair to do that in personal growth either. And so for me, being able to embrace a growth mindset inside of physicality was really, I was really empowered when I started thinking about realistic milestones. And not because I need like, lower milestones because I'm not as good at it, but because I need to take a realistic assessment of my beginning capabilities and grow from there in the same way that every other person does. And so reframing how comparison works in my head was really helpful for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zainab. Okay, so Toastmaster, do we have another time for another question, or are we?
Maybe one more. That's it.
Okay. Would somebody like to take the same question again? Perhaps the guest, Annette, Roman, would you like to take it? Sure, go ahead, Roman.
Thank you for the question. And sorry it took me so long. I kept on thinking of the examples and how to answer it. Realistically, what I'm thinking about is often people think that opening yourself up to new experience means that getting out of your comfort zone, and it's going to be really harmful. It is not. What's really harmful is doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again. It's like doing some perfectory exercise. For example, washing your clothes instead of using a washing machine. So the key here is to make sure that you open yourself to a new experience, and this new experience, it can be either improving your life towards where you want to be, or just automating something mundane and something you're really tired of doing. Once you automate it, and once you don't have to deal with it, you're suddenly gonna find yourself that you with more time to spare, and you're gonna be able to focus more on the things you love. And I believe that if it's not a key, it's just one of the strategies. There's no right or wrong strategy. There are just different strategies to approach it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. I think at this point, I'd like to turn control over back to our general evaluator.
Thank you, Harun. All the topics were very much interesting, and every question I was thinking how to answer. And yeah, it's a different way to think and look, the way that we develop our mindset and all. That's very much interesting. Now it's a time to ask the duty masters about how we did. Let me introduce let me call our counter. Yeah, I'm myself is a R counter. So I'm giving the report. Harun, you did 6, and Wyoming, I didn't find any R's. Georgie, no R's. Gautam, you did 2. Myself, I did 6. Jose, you did 4. Zena only once. Elvia, I found that it's 3 times. Okay, let me ask now. Let me ask the timer. Wyoming, how we did the timing.
Yes, Mr. General Evaluator, I'm going to read off the time. In the prepared speeches, Georgie spoke for 8 minutes and 30 seconds, Zaina 5:27, myself 6:15. In the evaluation, Gautam spoke for 2:46, Harun 3:17, Jose 3:21. In the table topics, Gautam spoke for 2:01, Jose 1:43, Elvira 1:53, Zaina 2:13, and Roman 1:22. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Wyoming. Now I'm going to call about the word master. Jose.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Word Master Report. The person of word for the day is perfunctory. I have Wyming, Georgie, Anesh, Harun, Godam, and Roman using it. Raise your hand if I missed you, but the word is perfunctory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Harun, I'm a little bit confused about the general evaluator role. Should I evaluate about the meeting, or should I call?
Yeah, go ahead and evaluate the meeting.
Yeah, Georgie, you're saying.
Yeah, I have my grammarian report.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Zaina, it was women dominate 75% of the labor force, step up to the plate, spurred by the women's rights movement, a growth mindset within physicality. I liked all the way you phrase those things. Waming, you started your speech off with a guy named Isidore Roby. He, you might want to just combine that into just a single sentence instead of just phrases. You also did start the studying. You meant you don't really need a the in there. You could just start studying. By the time 1980s, there should be a the in there. And I liked the way you phrased his face resonating in the tube. I thought that was really descriptive. Gautam, we can resonate on your topic. I slice it down to little bits. I thought that was all really well said. You ended your table topics with, it is how I do. I'm used to hearing it with It is how I do it or how I do something. Let's see here. You started, Haroon, with the history of the historical of the history of the washing machine. So I think you were kind of having a little trouble starting with that phrase. It illustrated that you were connected to the content. I like that phrasing as well. Let's see, Jose, wisdom of your message, very nice description. The technology comes in steps. Let's see, Roman, let's see, it was nothing right or wrong concerning strategies, just different strategies. I like that phrasing. That was my grammar report for today.
Thank you, Georgie. And before I going to evaluate about the meeting, I request all the members to vote for the best speaker and best table topic and best evaluator. And today we have three speakers, Georgie, Jaina, and Wyoming. And evaluators are Gautam, Harun, and Ose. So yeah, and please vote for the best speaker and evaluator, and also best table topic master. With that, let me give you a quick report about the today's meeting. And we started right on time, and all the speeches are very good, and even the evaluation and everything are done in the right on time. And overall, I feel like it's a very productive meeting, and everybody enjoyed the meeting. Now I'm going to turn the control back to Toastmaster.
I think I need to take over as president.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Anesh. That was a great general evaluation. So please vote so that I can just tally them. I've sent out the link again. Let me see how we did on the voting part. Where is my browser? Okay, so we have some results. Anybody else still wanting to vote? Okay, I think we're good to go. It's time to announce best table topics. Drum roll, please, everybody. Our best table topics master was Elvira. Congratulations. Best evaluator today was myself. Thank you, everybody. And our best speaker was Zaina. Unfortunately, she had to log off, but she was the best speaker today. And at this point, I'd like to thank everybody for joining. I'd like to get some feedback from our guests. Roman, would you tell us what you thought about the meeting?
Oh, yes, it was a great meeting. Everything was structured very, very well. We were always on time, and I especially liked the grammarian's job where it wasn't just, oh, you did this word and you did this bad. It's also was like, okay, you need to work in grammar in this case, do this and this, structured like that. I haven't really seen it in the different clubs at all. That's actually very surprising and very helpful.
Thank you. Elvira?
No.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, thank you for having me and allowing me to be part of tabletop topics. And it came as a surprise for me as to win the table topics. It was really great. Thank you. And many topics actually, it's the second meeting for me, and so many topics are related to the activity, to the life to the activities in my life. So it's like all the growth mindset, science, psychology is all the things I'm interested in. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Over to you.
Okay, so that concludes our meeting for today. I want to thank everybody for joining in. And I'd like to fill in the roles for next week. Do we have any volunteers for speakers?
Okay, I'll take one.
Gautam, you want to take one? Thank you.
I can be a backup speaker.
Okay. Georgie,
I can do if there is a spot.
there is a spot. Yes. Do we have a volunteer for Toastmaster? Anybody volunteer for Toastmaster? Jose? Okay. And table topics?
I can
Thank
do
you,
table
Wei-Ming.
topics.
Oh, I think Wei-Ming.
Okay, no problem.
And then we need volunteers for George for evaluator. Georgie, would you
can
take
do
an
that.
evaluator? Yeah. I can do evaluators too. Okay. I think we'll settle in the other ones, fill them out on later. Well, thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to stop the recording now. And